Hey everyone, my name is Neil Karski and I'm the CEO of Patient Engine, a seven-figure digital marketing, lead conversion, and coaching agency for high-ticket aesthetics providers. And I would like to personally welcome you to the Aesthetic Millionaires Show, where we sit down with industry entrepreneurs to talk about their personal journeys and discuss proven growth strategies. My genuine hope is that through this podcast, we can create more success stories in this industry and help more business owners scale past their competition. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined today by Dr. Dan Francis, the medical director and owner of South Jersey Aesthetics. Dr. Dan, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited to dive into your story a little bit. What made you to get in? What kind of a doctor are you? That's number one. We get a lot of physicians who are anesthesiologists or they have a healthcare practice and they get into aesthetics. How did you start out in medicine? How did you get into aesthetics?
Yeah, so it's a unique story, and thanks for having me, Neil. I'm showing my age, but 25 years ago, I did a residency in family medicine, and I did extra training in obstetrics and GI, where I did a month in the endoscopy suite because my whole plan was to go to a rural area where I could practice total medicine. So I worked my first position outside of when I finished my residency was in rural West Texas in a town called Seminole, in Seminole, Texas, which is in Gaines County, which is the number one oil producer, cotton producer, and peanut producer in the country. So it's pretty rural. So, I'm one of, a dozen physicians that have privileges at the hospital. They hired me to be the medical director, but anything else that I did, I billed fee for service. So all the procedures, I did, just to put it in perspective, I C-sectioned my wife and delivered my second daughter there, just because, the obstetrician there that I had backed up when he was on vacation, was not in town. I did a lot of endoscopies. I did EGDs, colonoscopies. I did all the surgical patients in the hospital. I was the first assist for the surgeon, the traveling surgeon that would come around. So I developed a wide variety of experience where, I was doing a lot of procedures. So back then, Botox had just came out, and I saw a course come around in San Antonio, Texas, where you went for a weekend, you got trained, you get certified in Botox. So I started doing that back in 2002, 2003. And then, over the years, just developed more skills, and we got trained to do smart lipo one time. I did a lot of that. And then, I just eventually, I was medical director of a place called Laser Remedy. And then I was doing well there. And then I opened up my own place in South Jersey. And then once I had the one location open and we were doing well, I opened the second location.
All right. Well, no shortcuts though. What we're gonna get, I'm gonna dive into you. I'm gonna dive into every aspect of that story. But that's great. It's really interesting to hear like your, the beginnings of your healthcare career up until now. So you were, were you still a practicing physician when you were a medical director at this other spa?
Yes. At that time, I was a hospitalist doing hospital medicine.
You're doing hospital medicine. And what, was it like, hey, I just, easy extra income, or it's like, this is something that I really want to learn more about? Why did you say yes to that opportunity?
I started doing this, almost full time back in 2007, 2008, because when I moved back from Texas, I spent 3 years there. When we moved back, because my wife's my parents were getting older and they weren't, they needed to be taken care of. So we moved back, and I basically didn't like East Coast family medicine. I don't like go work in an outpatient setting. So I became an ER doc for a company called MCare. And then I would travel, and I was traveling to, I would put out fires for the company. I would go to a place where, they had problems with their contract with the ER, with other providers, and they would pay me a lot of money to go in there and work there for a few weeks. And I was traveling a lot, and I was away from my family we lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and I would travel all over Pennsylvania. So one of my friends approached me. He owned East End Salon in Philadelphia, and there was a third floor up there that he wasn't using. And he knew my background. And he said, "Listen, I want you to just come there and do Botox and filler injections." And I said, I really didn't want to just do that. But then I met a woman named Cara Cartagena that was a rep for Cynosure. And she convinced me to buy a laser, which was a Cynosure Elite, which is actually two lasers. It's an Alex laser and a YAG laser, and you could do all skin types for laser hair removal. You could do spider veins, you do hyperpigmentation lesions. So I decided to, you know what I'll do? I'll buy a laser, and then I'll start up on East End. And the guy's name was Mikey Antonori. And he said, "Listen, I don't want anything from you. Just give it as service to my clients. And hey, if you're really successful, just give him, what he thinks or what I think he deserves." So I really didn't do very well there. And I was recruited to come out of there, and go somewhere else to work. And then I met a guy named Dr. Glenn Tobias up in Pennsylvania, in Doylestown, at the Institute for Laser and Aesthetic Medicine. I also went down to be trained to do smart lipo. Cynosure sent me down to Florida, and I got trained by a guy named Dr. Reynolds to do laser lipo, Baser, which is ultrasound assist lipo, and traditional lipo. And I came back and I started a program at the Institute for Laser and Aesthetic Medicine and down in Doylestown for Glenn Tobias. Him and I had a falling out after a little bit, and then I found Dr. Vicky Falcone in Philadelphia, who was also trained by Dr. Reynolds, was the first person to introduce the smart lipo to the city of Philadelphia. So she was really busy. I worked with her for a while. And then, I worked at a couple other places as a medical director, gaining more experience. And then, I picked up, I was able to stop doing, doing emergency medicine but then working for Vicky Falcone, we had a falling out. And I got away from it for a little while, and then I worked as a hospitalist. And then when I was working as a hospitalist full time, on the weekends, I started working at Laser Remedy. So, and then it just exploded from there. I was doing really well. And then I was able to open my own place. And then I was too busy with working as a hospitalist and working at Laser Remedy, and I stopped working there. And then here we are. This is 20 years later.
What year did you start your own practice?
That was 2000, just before COVID, so 2019.
Okay. And tell me about the process, like the ramp up process, like creating your brand and everything like that. Did you have you had a little bit of shortcut because you were a medical director, so you got to learn the business a little bit, but
right,
starting something from scratch, you kind of don't realize there's going to be other challenges that maybe you have not had the experiencing of conquering before.
Well, here, this is how I did it. And really, it's about being as lean as possible. So what I did was I just rented office space. I basically shared office space with another practice called Certified Derm, where they would do the medical derm, and they did some injections, but for the most part at that location, I was doing all the aesthetics. And I was just there one or 2 days a week. And doing it, being lean like that, it was just me, and I had one other person that would handle the phone calls and work the front desk, bring the patients back, and I would see them. So, I was able to just have one person I was paying, and I was paying maybe like 500 a month for the space that I was using. I would pay per day actually. And that's what they let me do. So and then I just started growing from there. And, the whole key to being successful is being able to run lean like that and still give quality service. And one of the main things is in the beginning was getting people to write reviews. So, because I feel like in this industry, we live and die by those reviews. If I ask patients coming in, they're like, "Oh, why me? Why'd you come here? How'd you find us?" They found us online, and a lot of people had really like nice things to say about you. So, that's how they ended up, in front of me at that point. So really, the key is to run lean and get a good reputation and build those basically Google reviews.
Yeah. So by running lean, you mean were you just really diligent also with how you utilize your finances, the type of devices you had, the type of marketing you invested into? Tell me a little bit more about that, because I think, it's really interesting. I just recorded, you'll see this reel, but I just recorded this reel about people buying these $250,000 devices without even being prepared from a standpoint of processes or marketing or sales, etc. But it's kind of like I've worked with devices companies; they're my partners as well. But devices don't get people in the door, right? Devices solve problems, but they by themselves are not revenue generators, right? So I want to hear a little bit more about this, because I think it's really good advice for other people.
It's huge. So first, in the beginning, other than I talked about very early in my career when I bought the one laser. Well, I wasn't, and exactly what you're saying. I didn't have a marketing plan. I didn't know what I sent out some postcards is what I did.
Wow.
And then I basically failed. I didn't do. I ended up selling that laser, and then and then, like I said, this was maybe 15, 20 years ago. But how did I just start in 2019? Zero machines, zero lasers, all injections, and getting really good at it, and getting a lot of experience was the key. And then once
were you the injector too at the time?
Yeah, I was the sole injector.
Gotcha.
Of the initial practice.
Do you think that since you were in your practice since the beginning and then built it around you, that allowed you to also be more successful? Because I do recognize in our industry, like I have some clients, and I'm gonna point fingers, but not directly, that are amazing physicians that are largely disconnected from their staff, and because also they start the practice, the staff kind of runs it, but they're not there setting the expectations, driving leaderships, driving the brand standards. They're not driving the processes, etc. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I mean, in the beginning, it was just me and one other person, and I basically did everything, and going, and developing all the processes and protocols, and really just doing good work. And then as time progressed and I got too busy, that's when I had to hire staff to help me inject. Well, first I hired a medical assistant, so I have someone in the room with me, because I never want to be alone with a patient. It's just good. It's a good practice, good medical legal practice to always have someone with you. Instead of having my front desk girl, it's just me and her, have to escort the patients back, and then not having someone sit up front with me, or not have someone sit up front, man in the office, and they're in the room with me. That's the first person that I hired. I hired a medical assistant so I could have the full-time person at the front desk. Then once I got busy enough where I couldn't handle the volume, that's when I started looking to hire other injectors. And I'll tell you, I put an ad out in LinkedIn, and I described, I wanted an injector that had, 1 or 2 years experience. So, and but at the very bottom, I said, I'm willing to train the right person that has no experience. Well, within 2 weeks, I got 75 applicants, 75, and two of them had experience out of the 75.
Do you think you can still find good people on LinkedIn for aesthetics?
Well, here's the follow-up to that question is I hired some people and I basically end up firing them because the ones with experience thought they knew too much, and they kept wanting to do it their way and not my way. And it was a disaster. So, I would tell them one thing and then I catch them doing the exact opposite again and then doing it again. And, it was very difficult in the beginning.
Can you share some specific examples? Was it like technique? Was it the sales process, the consultation process? What,
Well, the sales process and the consultation process, if you do excellent work, that part's easy. Your work sells itself. What I'm talking about is doing the injections or the procedure the way that I want them to do it correctly. For instance, I remember very distinctly, I had a nurse practitioner. I taught her how to inject the forehead in a certain pattern, and she, would just yes me to death. And then I would go over charts and I'd see that she's doing it her old way. And the way I find out is because I get a patient come back and complain that her forehead's still moving or, whatever. And I look in the chart and I see she's, even though I taught her not to inject that way, and she just continued to do that. So, when it's very difficult, if someone's already set in their ways and trying to get them to inject the way you want them to do.
Yeah. You said like, hey, the work sells itself. I will agree and I will also disagree. Because there's a lot of good people that do good work, but I know good people that don't have the right marketing or don't have the right visibility. So when you get like new patients, for example, who haven't really engaged with you, do you have a standard way where a standard consultation process or a standard sales process for new patients that allows you to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, we do now. I mean, in the beginning, I didn't have those processes in place and didn't really, learn how to do that. And I learned that as time went on. And those, basically it's, first, you have to make the patient feel like they're the most important person on the planet. That's number one. It's almost like I grew up in the restaurant and hospitality industry in Cape May, New Jersey, and I worked in a lot of restaurants. And the customer is always right. So that's kind of how we treat our patients. Is whether when they're complaining, we just take care of the problem. Whether that it's reasonable. As long as it's reasonable, it doesn't hurt them. Or, if someone complains, we just here, sign a receipt and I refund them, regardless. And then that's just one less, patient that could be a problem or a problem in the future. But the process is, what it is finding out exactly what they're interested in, what bothers them the most, and then what bothers them second most, what bothers them the third most. And how we do that is, when they come in, they fill out paperwork. It's a aesthetics questionnaire, and we kind of determine, looking at that, what they're interested in, what we need to talk about, and what to get them to, do something about it or book for a future appointment.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think everybody does things a little bit differently. I know at my boutique spas, my 3 locations, like we have a standard protocol, that I expect all my estheticians to follow. I want to make sure that we have certain goals and expectations for how many new patients to consult to close. All that stuff, and we consistently review notes and make sure to train to make them better on handling objections and understanding.
That is fabulous. But personally, I don't have time. I don't have time to implement things like that, and we're still successful. So
yeah, I mean,
I'm sure we could be much more successful if we did have implemented that strategy.
That's why we're talking, Dr. Dan. Yeah, that's why we're talking.
That's for sure.
Cool. So let's talk about that success, because you started from the ground up. You're a medical director. You started your own practice. You started injecting. You found another injector that you trained, and things kind of started to make sense. They started to work. They started snowballing. You started getting clients, better results. What kind of marketing strategies did you utilize early on to get to like the 20s, 30s, 40,000 per month?
Okay, so I met
besides
a woman
postcards.
No, so that was many years ago. Before that was back in the early 2010s. Now we're talking about 2019.
I want to send some mailers. Honestly, I just want to send some mailers. I just want to, because it's for more shock value. I mean, I always throw out my mail, but hopefully people don't as much anymore. It depends how much junk you get, I guess, right? But like, I think people do value things like on paper these days because everything is digital. Like, I don't know about you, but I hate digital menus at restaurants. I want a paper menu, right?
Well, what's great about that is you can put before and afters on the mailers. You can't do that on social media.
Yeah.
They don't allow it, because you're going to hurt someone's feeling, or you're going to point out that someone has something wrong with them, or something that's met as policy. So,
on ads, yeah.
Yeah, on ads, yeah. So, I met someone, and basically she came in and took over my social media, my Instagram, my Facebook, and just doing organic posts. And, that's kind of where everything exploded. Once she came on board and started doing all the Instagram posts, the reels, that's when that was the turning point. That was it. Once that hit, we've been off to the races ever since, trying to figure out new things and do, and then I started doing paid ads through social media. In the beginning, we were just boosting posts, or organic posts. We just pay to boost them. And then, it got up to where I was spending about $10,000 a month, and I was managing all the ads myself, because in the beginning, when Facebook, I guess, merged with Instagram, they became Meta. The ads manager started to get difficult. It wasn't just boosting posts anymore. I had to learn really how to, make all these.
You had time for that?
No, but I didn't have any options. I wouldn't sleep at night sometimes, because I was trying to figure out this ads manager. They would give you a marketing expert from
they're not good.
Meta, but they would only give it to me one every 2 weeks. I need something now, like every day. I need someone to answer my questions.
Let's rewind a little bit, because
not
ahead. A lot of people decide to spend $10,000 a month in ads.
Well, I grew up. That was at the height. I don't even spend that much anymore, because I learned. But in the beginning, no, we gradually got up to that. In the beginning, we're spending.
I think if you're a 7-figure practice, you should be spending $10,000 on ads. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
My locations will grow over 7 figures this year. I have 3 locations one with each room and one provider. And I think cumulatively we spend 11,000 or 12,000.
Yeah,
So to me, if
that's about right.
if you have the right systems in place, which I use my own agency, so I'm really, I'm confident in my agency to get me results. And I am the CEO, so I want to make sure that they get results for my own spas. But let's rewind back. Before you started spending good amount of money on ads, I want to talk about organic social media content because not a lot of people do it well. And quite frankly, it's becoming harder and harder to really get business from organic social media posts unless you're really doing something really high quality or it's super informative, super educational, or super entertaining. What kind of angle did she bring?
Entertaining.
Entertaining?
So entertaining. That was it. Nothing,
Was it you dancing?
It wasn't me like talking about, that how I do my under eyes. I mean, it was really her just making people laugh.
And how did she do that? Was it you
just making funny reels, really?
Was it you dancing? Was it you singing?
No, you know what? I was always reluctant. She got me a couple times in there to do something, but she's always making them with the staff. She's always doing all kinds of things. If you go on our Instagram, well, she does they do a lot of stories now, so you don't get to see. But there's if you go on our Instagram, you can see the kind of content that she puts out.
I'm gonna check it out right now.
And it's her doing it herself. I mean, it's pretty good. And she basically taught herself.
Well, she hasn't followed me back yet, so she's in trouble.
And it's kind of interesting. We went from 6,000 followers to 10,000 within the first year and a half. And over the last couple of years, though, we haven't. It was when we were boosting a lot of posts. That's when we were gaining a lot of followers.
But that doesn't work anymore.
When it became ads.
Because you're getting followers doesn't mean you're getting the right followers, right? Well, that's another lesson, right? Because we want to make sure we're getting in front of our target audience. We want to make sure we're getting in front of people who will either our customers, who are related to our customers, who are our prospects, or who are related to our prospects, right? Everything else is vanity metrics, right? It doesn't matter. Unless you're buying,
Oh, of course. Well, I'll put it in perspective. One of the things that really I discovered, and only because I decided I don't know if you know what Pearl Diver is, but it's an application. It's a company where, they'll put I forget what it's called on your website, so that every person that goes there, you get all their information. I get what sex they are, where they're from, even their income, where they work, their home phone number, their work phone number. You can get all that information. I don't do it anymore because the leads that would come off of those, just weren't in all these people coming to the website were not necessarily people we want to market to. So because they're distance wise, because I would get people from all over the country coming to the website, being driven there from Meta. I find out, even though I make the ads and put my 20-mile radius around each med spa, even though I do that, I'd still be getting people from all over the country. And I've only found this out because of using that company's app for a brief amount of time. I at that point, and I was spending $10,000 a month. At that point, I took a step back. I said, "That's it. I'm not doing this anymore." And I had hired companies before that would put us on the contract, and then they never would deliver. So that's when I started picking it up myself. And then I was up to doing $10,000 a month, and I learned this. And then I found new companies where, they don't make me sign a contract because they're confident that, I'm not going to leave them. So that's where I am at this point. I don't handle it myself anymore. I've good people that, make the ads for me. We give them content, and they do, they do the ads manager and they handle all that stuff. But you have to be really careful with Meta, just because when I found out, I was spending a lot of money to get leads that weren't going to ever fly to my med spa from Texas. So you gotta be careful, and you don't even realize, you think that you're putting on when you make the ad, the radius, and it's only going to be shown to people that are in that radius, but that's not necessarily true. I had worked with a bunch of their experts too. We would do they would tell me, all right, well, just let's exclude all these areas, and so that it would stay.
Yeah, that kills the ad.
Only exclude so many.
That kills the ads too.
That's just crazy.
I mean, listen, we spend probably $5 to $6 million a year for my agency on aesthetic ads, and it's a mess. It's a mess. I think you're right. I think Meta's ever changing. I think they're always changing something. The algorithm's changing. Sometimes they make unannounced changes. Sometimes they make changes and they're not working. So we're super proactive in making sure.
It's a moving target, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Like the craziest thing that they did, which affected so many of my clients, and this was before I opened my spas, was they added. Used to be able to target recently or are living in and people who are recently in the area, right? Which could be anybody, and then they combine them, right? So
that's what they would argue with me was happening. They're like, oh, well, that person from Texas
visited.
They must have been in that area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in the very beginning, I took that as the answer. I quickly realized, okay, these thousands of people weren't here, and then all of a sudden now they're in California. There's no one's visiting this area, from thousands of people visiting this area per month from California. It's just not possible.
So organic social media helped you. The ads helped you. What helps you to stay competitive, stay different, stay consistent? Because we know that this industry has a lot of new businesses opening every single day. It's becoming a commoditized, saturated type of industry. I think there's still enough clients to go around, but
there's plenty. It's growing. I think we're not going to reach the point where the places that are closing, just I see it all the time. There are new injectors, right? I opened my place that I've had 15 years plus experience. And you drop too many eyelids, and you have a couple of people that aren't happy, and they're in that town, and it goes around, and people don't, and you don't get a lot of good reviews. Your business goes downhill really quickly.
Yeah. So what helps you stay relevant, stay different, stay competitive, to make sure that you continue to stay a healthy seven-figure practice?
Yeah, so I tell you one thing, a couple things, but the one thing is I don't go out there and I don't buy things that don't give significant results. I'm not buying Morpheus. I'm not buying old therapy. There's a couple other ones, like I'm not buying Cool Sculpting. Like I've demoed these and trialed all these things. Now, they're money makers. They can be, but it's short lived because they don't produce results. And I feel like a lot of these companies and you see these before and afters, and they're just manipulated photos. I mean, I've actually downloaded some and uploaded them into ChatGPT recently to prove it, and it'll tell you, what was done to the photo. there's a lot of lighting tricks that you can do. I mean, people, but they do even more than that. They'll smooth out wrinkles using it's just like
All right. So
I feel like the FDA. Yeah, go ahead.
lesson number one is you only buy things that get clients really good results.
That's it.
And if there's no such, and if you don't have a need, you don't buy more. Okay.
Correct.
So that's okay. So that's results and budgeting. What else? Let's talk about sales. Let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about customer retention.
I mean, we do. I do like a program where every neurotoxin patient, I don't know if you disagree with this, but there's out there that if you get Botox too often, that you're going to grow immune to it. Well, I put all my patients on 11-week schedules so that doesn't wear off before they come back and get redosed, because I want their static wrinkles to go away. If they have static wrinkles and you let it wear off, they're never going to go away. If you just keep making them, but if you're never making them anymore, eventually they just exfoliate out. So that's one thing that we do for retention. I get them to come back every 11 weeks and we take $50 off if they show up at that appointment. And then I take 50 off if they come in for 90 days. And we do a lot of like,
how many do you think you have, out of those people who make their follow-up appointments, are they on a membership or they just purely just a follow-up visit?
I mean, it's not a membership per se. It's just like they get $50. We got an Evolus membership. Lauren is working on another type of membership that isn't just neurotoxins. But that's the one that really I get people on their 11-week schedule. I explain that they're gonna get rid of their static wrinkles and they're gonna stay away, and we give them $50 off, and that's the main way for retention. Plus, we have a bunch of contests and we giveaways, and Lauren does a lot of stuff on Instagram. But I tell you, the customer or patient retention has to do with doing a good job and giving them a good experience and becoming friends with your patient. And number one is gaining their trust. That my patients know that if I don't think they need filler in their nasolabial folds, even if they want it, I'm going to tell them that they don't, because they know that I'm not selling to them, that I'm not in it to take their money. And once you gain their trust, there's your patient retention right there. They're never going to leave you.
As far as, so you said you now have two, you have two locations?
Yeah. Yeah. One just outside in the Philadelphia suburbs, and the other one down by the Jersey Shore.
And how do you manage both of them effectively?
I have a lot of help. I have Lauren, and I have the one down the shore. I have a lot of great injectors that basically do all the work there. I don't do much, and I only work a couple of days a week at the other one. I got a physician assistant, and I've trained all of these people, so I know that they're doing. For injections, they're doing exactly the way I do it.
Do you set any sales KPIs for them? Any goals that they have to reach for you to get to a certain revenue level every single month, or does it just happen more organically?
No, it happens organically, but I know I should do that, and I know, and we pay them per hour, and we don't pay them a commission either, which is something that I should probably do. We pay them a commission if they sell products, but I'm saying, if you have someone that's injecting for you and they get their typical 3 areas, someone might recommend their DAOs if they're getting paid commission, or they recommend, you should probably address it to your chin, or take a look at your smile lines. You need some fillers. So That's definitely
There's a
something that's
lot.
super
Yeah,
fun.
there's a
There,
lot. There's a
plus,
lot you could.
I
Yeah,
leave a lot on the table.
yeah, yeah. You are. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. But it's no. But you're doing well, which is great, right? I think you just have more of an opportunity to help more people solve more things. That's really all it
Yeah,
comes down
sure.
to, right?
Yeah,
Whether it's anti-aging, aesthetics, rejuvenation, any sort of cosmetic things, any sort of I mean, variety of different pain points that you could do, right? Because they're coming in there for one thing, but we all know that most people want to address multiple things, right? So I think the self-awareness is there. I think, hey, I could or I could implement a commission structure and at the same time have accountability and have goals of like, hey, I'm going to pay you more, but I expect we all win. We all win, and the client wins if we all sell more.
yeah, of course.
Um,
Yeah,
so you have two
you're
locations.
hired. You're hired, Neil. Come hang out with us for a little bit.
I've been in this space for 5 years. I've coached over 1,000 people. So at this point, I hope I know like a couple of things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you do.
So what are your goals? Like you have two locations. Like, do you want to get more? Do you want to get more locations? Do you want to grow your existing locations? Do you want to start educating people? There's so many different ways to take this. If you go out of state, we might just have to change your brand a little bit because it won't be called South
'cause of the
Jersey
name.
Aesthetics.
I know.
But let's talk about.
Well, I'm 53 years
Yeah.
old. My dad, I don't want to, for the most part, retired within the next 3-4 years. So I've had people contact me, venture capitalists and people that want to buy the practices. So, and after my initial plan was, okay, let's open a third one outside Atlantic City, which is basically in the middle of the two that we have, which are about an hour and 45 minutes apart. So there'd be one right in the middle of the two. And then once I get that up and going, then, I'll basically sell the business. I own the properties and I basically lease the properties from me personally to the business. So I'll maintain owning the properties, and to whoever buys the med spas will just lease from me. And,
Smart.
that's my exit strategy. However, after speaking with a few different, investors, currently we do that volume with each place only being open 3 days a week.
Wow.
So, yeah. So they told me, they're like, because I was about to go get another property up, and start doing this because, I
Open your days, baby. Open your days.
Yeah, so that's what they said. They're like, look, you're going to get 3 or 4 times your EBITDA if you get them going at least 5 days a week, each of them. So do that first before you go get a third one. And so that's the plan now.
For sure. Yeah. Because you already have clientele. You already have great staff who could probably work more hours. I think that.
No, I could. No, I could do it.
I think,
we
and
could
then
do it.
and then you got to set some financial goals in place. It seems like the free flow has done really well. I just talked to somebody who was actually an injector in his own practice, and he was an anesthesiologist, and he and I was like, hey, like Ben, like, do you have like goals and KPIs and this? And he's like, no, things have been going well, great. And it's similarly, which is interesting because I'm huge on KPIs, I'm huge on targets, huge on goals, huge on financials. But like, I find that sometimes, like you said, maybe you just do really good work and things just work out. Like, and
it really does, but it's you're not maximizing your potential, is what it is. You're just you're okay, you're happy, you're doing well, and you're not maximize your potential, and that's basically it.
Wow, that's super powerful that you said that, because because I think you have it spot on. What kind of advice would you give to other med spa owners? Maybe a couple big pieces of advice that you had learned throughout your journey. I think our industry is ever changing. I think the internet changed a lot of things for all service industries, not just this one, right? I think that you and I can both attest that advertising was a whole different world 5 years ago, and it was a lot easier to get leads too, right? Or book or appointments, really. So what kind of couple big pieces of advice for people that you would advocate for publicly?
Yeah, I mean, we already touched on the main ones. I mean, number one, if you're starting out, don't just go out and buy a bunch of equipment and think and the patients are gonna walk in the door, because you're gonna fail. You're gonna have payments to make, and you're not gonna have the revenue to support it. That's number one. Number two, obviously make sure you do good work and make sure that the public knows by getting reviews. That's very important. And another is, don't just buy the latest, greatest new piece of equipment that comes out because you see that, people are making a lot of money, because if it's not going to produce results, then it's going to fizzle out pretty quickly. I don't know. I have a number of friends that have purchased a piece of equipment, and they didn't ask me about it first, and it's just sitting in the corner now. And these pieces, these machines aren't cheap. I mean, if you pay full price, you're paying up to $150,000, $175,000. So you make a couple of those mistakes, and you're not going to survive. Because you have to remember this: just because the rep says that this is what the before looks like and this is what the after looked like, that's not necessarily the truth. And just because the FDA cleared it doesn't mean it works. I feel like they'd clear anything as long as it's not going to hurt the patient. Because there are so many machines and lasers and other devices out there that if they work, and it's not worth the amount of money you pay for that treatment. Meaning, it might work, but not very significantly. It might work if you get 20 treatments over a year, but you're paying $3,000 for treatment, and they're selling you a package of 3 for $6,000. Your patients just aren't going to be happy, and you're going to get a bad name. You're not going to make it. And those are the actual main points that you need to take home.
What are you going to do with all this? If you exit, what are you going to do with all this money? What are you going to do with your time is the question. Have you thought about that?
Things I want to do. Oh, yeah, definitely. So, one thing I'm going to travel. I think everyone says that. That's cliche. My son is about to graduate. He's going to be a senior this year, and he's going to be playing football at some university somewhere. So I'm going to buy a house there and go in the fall, spend a lot of time wherever he's playing football. And I'm going to buy a boat and sail around the world at some point.
I love it. If people want to connect with you and network and brainstorm and mastermind, where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can find me on the internet. You can find me on my Instagram. It's a Dr. Dan Frame. You can, my email is basically my business, and my name is Dr. Dan Francis at South Jersey Aesthetics.
And your brand is southjerseyaesthetics.com.
Southjerseyaesthetics.com, yeah.
Dr. Dan Fran and everybody, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Neil. It was fun.